Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Late Winner Show. Today, definitely, we're talking about Newcastle United, and their big takeover that has just been taken place by the Saudi Arabians. Newcastle, I think, are the richest club in the world now. It is the day Newcastle fans thought would never come. Mike Ashley has gone, and after 14 years of difficulty, new owners are in place, backed by the financial, might be the Saudi Arabian state. Ashley has finally sold Newcastle United, and for largely the same price, around 300 million pounds. He agreed back in April 2020 when this deal was gonna take place, and to the same would-be purchasers. His 18-month epic has gone full circle, and having appeared doomed to fail on several occasions, the takeover that Ashley, the buyers, and the most important, the vast majority of Newcastle fans wanted has last been concluded. So let's talk about a little bit about the new owners. The consortium comprises of three separate groups. It is fronted by Stavely, who, along with her husband 𝗪𝗡𝗪𝗔𝗬 and the firm PCP Capital Partners, are assuming a 10% stake. Stavely, a financier, has been attempting to buy the club for more than 4 years, and she has three separate offers rejected by Ashley in November 2017. The Reuben brothers, David and Simon, billionaire siblings who own a private equity and real estate company, are also taking a combined 10% stake. They already boast a significant property portfolio in the city, which includes Newcastle Racecourse and the Monument Mall shopping center, and are expected to be represented by Jamie Reuben, David's son, and a former director at Championship Club QPR, which is Queens Park Rangers. Finally, and most controversially, the majority 80% shareholders is the PIF, otherwise known as the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Saudi Arabia. I have Alex and Elijah uh, to talk about all this takeover that has been happening, and what are the future prospects of Newcastle, what's going to happen with the manager, and how soon can they spend all this money that they have now, and how soon can they be in the top six. Or we should probably say the big seven now. It's no more big six anymore in the Premier League. So it should be classified as a big seven. Welcome, Alex and Elijah. How are you doing, guys?
I mean, I can't complain.
Yeah, all good.
Definitely, I think that's something that all Newcastle fans would be saying, at like they can't complain. But before we do start, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your ongoing work that has been happening? Alex,
Yeah,
why don't you?
yeah, I can jump up. So definitely been a tough couple years under Steve Bruce. The fan base was really enamored by Rafa Benitez, and seeing them come back up after Steve McLaren had been the manager. Rafa walked away because he wasn't getting the support or backing he desired from ownership, and that kind of just set the fan base off. It had already been tense, and at least there was some kind of hope with Rafa and what he might be able to build within the constraints. But at that point, when Steve Bruce was announced as the manager, it was so underwhelming, and it was so typical that they would just, the Rolodex of English managers, just pick one and appoint him. And so, I mean, towards the end there, I was at a point of, I didn't even really want them to score goals, because it would just justify Mike Ashley and his decision to bring in Steve Bruce, who no one thought was good enough. So kind of an overnight change with the takeover of, okay, now how any way possible to survive and stay up. So then they can kind of put their plan in place. So it's been quite a change in attitude over the past 2 weeks here.
Elijah?
Yeah, I think let's put all the bases there. I mean, the big thing is, like, when Bruce was brought in, it was such an unambitious hire, and just like a summation of essentially the Ashley era in a nutshell. Ashley was too cheap to keep something good around, and didn't realize how good he had it until it was gone. and then subsequently wasn't really punished for it. I mean, Newcastle under Bruce have had some honestly unlikely and somewhat impressive finishes given how incompetent Steve Bruce is as a manager. And so it's been kind of wild to see the on-field product and not see any sort of change from up top. When you look at Newcastle being this season so far, even before the consortium, it was people were calling for Bruce's head. We were 19th or 20th in pretty much every single category. Goals allowed, goals scored, expected goal, like literally everything. And it's like, how can we sit here and let this man continue to manage the club? And so spirits were low, and it's just kind of like a summation of 14 years under Ashley, where there was just no investment in the squad, no investment in the facilities, no investment in the community, no investment in the academy, and then just like a big slap in the face of when there was a glimmer of hope that we could take Newcastle forward, and a manager that was willing to work under the constraints somewhat of the club and stick around for the long term. We kind of just let him walk away for nothing, and so it was just really dark times at Newcastle, and that's why people clung so heavily on to 18 months ago when this takeover was first rumored to happen. Was like, it was so dim. I mean, we're at a point where people, literally like tens of thousands of people, had canceled their season tickets because they were just like, I can't support this club under Ashley.
Mm-hmm. There was obviously this PIF's involvement has also been really controversial. The Amnesty International report raised concerns about Saudi Arabia's appalling human rights record. But, 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗧𝗃, who the fiancé of 𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃 Khashoggi, the journalist murdered in the Saudi Arabia consulate of the Turkish city of Istanbul in October 2018, also sent a series of letters to the Premier League urging them to block the takeover. Now, obviously, there were ethical issues were not the primary reason for this takeover, but obviously there were this well publicized issues of piracy, because this beIN Sports had this pirate broadcaster called like 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗃 or something in running in Saudi Arabia, and they were like illegally streaming the Premier League games and all that stuff that was happening. What do you guys have to say about that? Like, do you feel like this takeover is well justified, or you still feel like, because there are people who are angry by this?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are always going to be angry. First and foremost, like, I don't know. I think it's dependent on, there are some people who are angry that it isn't their club, and that's a whole different discussion. But I mean, there was always going to be anger. It's a controversial group. My personal stance has always been this. One, there's two things. One, I don't think there is there's not a morally, fine billionaire of any kind. You look at any billionaire. I mean, we joked around a lot about getting bought by Jeff Bezos. He's not a great guy. And so it's like, I think that that's from my perspective, is like, I feel like no matter who our ownership was, there was always going to be, as long as there was a billionaire like next to their title, there was always going to be something that was going to be, you could really find fault with. You look at Chelsea and what their owner has done. You look at Man City. I mean, it's the list goes on and on in terms of just like corruption, et cetera, especially in football. And I think it's really telling that this whole time, the human rights aspect was completely ignored by the Premier League. And the issue this whole time was literally just appeasing their Qatari broadcast partners this whole time. Like, this song and dance, you could say they could say whatever they wanted about it. But at the end of the day, as soon as the ban was lifted in Saudi Arabia on beIN, the takeover is literally pushed through within 24 hours. So you take that as you may. My secondary thing is, fans can't control who owns the club. And to ask people and demand people to walk away from a club they've been supporting for years due to just the ownership, it's a tough ask. It's a tough ask for anyone. I don't think I would ask it for anyone. And especially, it's easier as an American to sit back and look at things from our perspective, being so far away from Newcastle. But the people in Newcastle have a right to celebrate and have a right to stick with the club. It is the center of that community. It's the center of that city. The stadium is literally in the middle of the city. And, I mean, it means a lot to them. So to ask them to walk away from the club due to ownership, when they've been trying to force ownership out for at least 12 or 13 years before I think it's a tough ask for them. And so I find it easier to try to separate and be critical of owners at the same time as supporting the club. Mainly because as a Newcastle fan, we've been critical of our ownership for the last 10 years and still have tried our hardest to support the club, support the players, support the efforts of the club, support the efforts of the community, support the managers, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's kind of my personal perspective. I think what Saudi Arabia is doing is awful, and I don't stand for it. I think it's ridiculous if a Newcastle fan is going around dressing like a Saudi Arabian or putting Saudi flags in their bio. I think, you've lost the plot there. But I'll continue to support the club and whatever the club does.
Yeah, I think let's put all these issues aside and let's talk about Newcastle from a footballing perspective. I think so as you correctly mentioned, Elijah, I think it's a huge club. It has a history, and the club is in the middle of the city and everything. You look at the stadium, like it's been well built. Like it's not something like when you look at 13 years ago when Man City were part. It's probably like a yo-yo club. I would describe that as a yo-yo club. And from there, like all that takeover happened, and then they invested. All this gradually happened, and it took them about 3 years to get where they actually wanted to be. We're talking about Newcastle. What do you think that the owner should do first when it comes to football, and what will be the new owner's priorities? Alex, if you
I think you set it up well. So I think it's tough because even in this first week, it's already like people are panicking because Steve Bruce is still the coach, and there's just so much from top to bottom that's been, we feel, just mismanaged. Mike Ashley always in all his business engagements has just stripped it to the bone, doesn't care about the workers, doesn't care about really the end product, just cares about the profits. So in a small way, there's a glimmer of light that there's not a lot of debt in the club, but overall, I mean, everything from, I think that one of the biggest things is just the direction that the football goes. So a footballing director, someone that comes in, it's not 𝗕𝗲𝗓𝗏, it's someone that knows what they're doing, has been at a successful club, and can set the direction of what does the academy look like, what does player recruitment look like, where do we want to deploy scouts to try to find talent that we need to compete now, but to be successful in the future. So I think that's where it really starts, is what's the direction of the club, what do we want our culture to look like, because right now it's just non-existent. It's literally, who can we buy for cheap, and can they kind of keep us in the Premier League? I mean, you think about the fact that last year, I mean, Jamal Lascelles and Karl Darlow were playing in the Premier League, and they were like 7 or 8 years ago, like a 2-player deal from Nottingham Forest on, like, it was just like they just grabbed them, and one's the captain and one was the starting goalkeeper for a number of years. So it's like the club's just been run on pennies for years. So just a reset as far as what does the direction of football look like in the future, and how do we take small steps to stay in the Premier League and then be successful year over year.
Yeah. Stavely even mentioned in 2020 that the consortium planned to invest about £250 million into the club over the first few years. But that figure includes expenditure on other areas such as, infrastructure as well. So, obviously, I think they would need to invest in their infrastructure. They would need to in the academy. They would need to invest in all that, because that's all like the future goal. It's obviously not going to happen tomorrow. That's all future. But they need to start investing right now, so that when you look 5 years, like if we can talk about like Newcastle's 5-year plan, they have everything set up in the next 5 years. And obviously we cannot say that tomorrow, or even in January, or even in the next summer transfer window, like the likes of Erling Haaland or Kylian Mbappe, who are going to be available, they're just going to be available for Newcastle. That's probably not going to happen. But they probably might want to look at the likes of, like, even, let's say, even so I support obviously Manchester United. Like look at the likes of 𝗂𝗽𝗀, look at the likes of Anthony Martial, look at the likes of Jesse Lingard, who So look at the clubs and see which are the players who are not getting their times. Like even Raheem Sterling just recently reported that he would like a new fresh opportunity. Look at the players like that, and then maybe try to convince them. Obviously, these are very big players, and they might want to not join as into a team like Newcastle. But if the owners can explain them their vision and what they're trying to build, obviously everyone knows now that they have money. But if the owners can explain it to them, like if their vision to the players, they can buy into that vision. Probably this club can definitely go far, and you can see, and definitely there's no discussion about if they're going to win the Premier League title or not. In the next 5, 6, 7 years, you will see that it's inevitable now. It has to come. So, Elijah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the first few signings are going to be a mixture of, and again, it all depends on like Alex was alluding to earlier. There's no direction at the club. Honestly, Alex is spot on. One of the only consistent things about Mike Ashley was he was a buy low, try to sell as high as possible kind of guy, which made a 40 million pound signing in Joelinton just literally probably the most shocking move of the Ashley era. To spend that much money on a player that they knew so little about was wild. But in their eyes, they felt that Joelinton could have become a 80 million pound player. You look at how much they sold 𝗂𝗽𝗂 Perez for. 𝗂𝗽𝗂 Perez was bought for like less than 2 million pounds from like, a smaller La Liga side. So I think that it all depends on the direction of whoever you bring in a sporting director. I think it's always good to try to get players who are out of disgruntled, and you'll see the amount of links that we'll have will always be disgruntled players, disgruntled managers, because it's an easy link to make. But does that signing make sense? Does it make sense to go after Raheem Sterling when you've got an 𝗟𝗓𝗓𝗏 at the club who already plays on that same side? Does it make sense to go after Van de Beek? It probably makes more sense to go after a guy like that, a little bit younger, in a position of need for Newcastle, could really grow with the club. Or does it make sense for Newcastle to try to get an older signing to just kind of ease fans over as they try to get younger and bring in and really fill out the depth of the squad? So I'm honestly curious to see what direction we go in January. I honestly have no idea, and I couldn't tell you. I have no idea what the ownership's thinking. Based on what they've said, they've talked about investing in academy, investing in youth and things like that. So maybe that's a 𝗵𝗂𝗪 Kamara, maybe that's going after some of the young French talent over in Ligue 1, or going after some younger talent in La Liga or in the Eredivisie. But I mean, at the end of the day, their priority in January really needs to be just signing players that can help us stay up. Looking at Newcastle, can upgrade at nearly every part of the pitch. You can upgrade anywhere. There are some players that I think will be around for the next couple of years. Your Almirons, your 𝗟𝗓𝗓𝗏, maybe your Callum Wilsons, maybe your Isaac Haydens, maybe Lascelles because he's a captain. But everywhere else on the pitch, you can see clear upgrades. And so in January, I think that Newcastle are going to probably make 3 to 4 signings, probably a center back, probably a central midfielder, probably another striker. Right now, Callum Wilson's the only striker we have at the club, and he can trip and tear his hamstring. So you don't want to put all your eggs in that one basket. Maybe another creative player as well. That should be the first priority. It doesn't matter how much it costs. Doesn't matter who it is. You just need upgrades from what you currently have.
So you just basically mentioned that the upcoming transfer window, which is called as a winter transfer window, is basically going to be called Newcastle transfer window.
I mean, I would be shocked. I mean, I think Newcastle are going to be active in that window regardless. But I mean, we're 7 games in, 8 games in, 7 games in, I think, and Newcastle have 0 wins. So it's not a recipe for success. And so signings will have to be made in January.
Yeah, I think definitely that's one definite thing that is going to happen in the winter transfer window. Let's talk a little bit about Steve Bruce as well. I think we can definitely call Steve Bruce as a legend for Newcastle United. I think he was playing even, and then he managed, and I think he's done a decent job with what he had at Newcastle. It's nice to see Newcastle the new owners actually gave him that one game against Tottenham yesterday, as we record this. So he managed his thousandth game, and he obviously, before even the match, in the press conference, he mentioned that he wanted some clarity about his future. Like, he wanted to know where this club's going, and he wants to know if he's going to be available to the club or not. Because obviously, with new owners, they want to change their approach and they want to change their vision, bring in a new manager, and that's why. What do you think in terms of the managerial appointment? Like, what are you thinking in terms of which manager can you actually get in to replace Steve Bruce? Obviously, again, talking about the same thing, it's not likely that Antonio Conte or someone like that, is Zinedine Zidane, who's been available, is not going to come in. Like, maybe a coach like maybe Steven Gerrard, who's been asked, who even asked is his Rangers press conference that would he be available to coach Newcastle? And he didn't deny it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I haven't been shy about how much I've disliked Steve Bruce's tenure here. Just overall, it's just been a slow descent into just. I don't even think they train like more than like walkthroughs anymore. So it's going to take somebody that I hate the idea of like the relegation experience. In a way, it trying to find a way to get a result in a match is something that every manager should be doing. Is even when, let's say Chelsea are going away to Man City, they might be looking, what's the best way for us to get a point from this? So I think any manager can set up a team to do what they need to get results. And I think Rafa was very pragmatic about, okay, we're going away to this team. We're playing at home against a good team. We need to find a way to he'd have 2 or 3 main emphasis that everybody on the pitch knew. So as far as a manager that comes in, I don't think it's going to be just in the way that like a player like Anthony Martial might want to go somewhere where Europa or probably Champions League is a possibility. You need a manager that is going to be, kind of willing to be maybe even the bridge manager at Newcastle, and will be a legend in his own right, but he might not lift the trophy. So somebody like an Eddie Howe, I just feel like that's just like the perfect mix, because he managed Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser and Matt Ritchie. And so I think with those relationships, with his Premier League experience, and with just a fresh approach, a fresh face, and a manager that it seems like he's been waiting for the right opportunity. A lot of managers just jump at the next opening, but I think that would be a good fit. I've always kind of wanted Eddie Howe to come in at some point and just kind of be able to take his career to the next stage. Bournemouth are they had some fun moments when they were up in the Premier League, but you're just never going to get too far with them. So Eddie Howe, and then the likes of Antonio Conte, that just seemed like it was never going to happen. And it would be fun to see Jose Mourinho. He's always spoken well of Newcastle and his relationship with Sir Bobby Robson. So that would be fun. I don't know if, at this point, I wouldn't put anything past Jose, but those are the two that I would love to see.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, you look at what Man City did when they had their takeover. Like, initial manager was Mark Hughes. Like, it was nothing flashy, nothing crazy. And then it was Mancini after that. I think Pellegrini was probably after that. So, you got to work your way up to getting to those elite managers. I think Eddie's a perfect start. Actually, just even there's that's latest news is that there was even kind of someone's reached out to him about talks about becoming the manager. You're looking at people who are going to be available. He's available. A lot of the links are wonderful so far. A lot of really good names out there. But, Brendan Rodgers is at a club, and so it's like, as great as that would be, and he's at a club that's ambitious and that's doing the dang thing. They just spent $100 million on a training facility. Like, they're spending money on good quality young players. It's actually a direction Newcastle should be looking to emulate. And same with Gerrard, same with some of the other guys we've been linked to. They're at clubs. And so while it is, kind of nice to dream and say, oh, we want some of these managers and some of them would be good fits, the realistic thing is, like, we have a manager in Steve Bruce who's currently incompetent. You want to get rid of him as soon as possible, and you want a manager that you believe can, one, secure your safety, and two, is comfortable being a part of a rebuilding process. And Eddie is a perfect example of that. He's stuck with Bournemouth for a long time, got them to the Prem, got them to relative success in the Prem. And honestly, tactically, it's just miles ahead of Steve Bruce, which again, very low bar, the lowest bar possible. I'm tactically miles ahead of Steve Bruce. I don't know. There's not much else I can say on him.
So final question for you guys, and this is probably a long shot, probably so when do you think the earliest you will see a Premier League title coming to Newcastle?
Ooh, it's 2021 right now, so we'll for the sake of this, it's the 2021-2022 season. I mean, I would give Newcastle, honestly, I would say 2026 is probably the year that you start to think Newcastle's a legitimate contender. That's
Okay.
5 years. So that means after 5 years, you would hope that we have the infrastructure in place. Because remember, like Alex was saying, our scouting department's like 3 people. Like,
Yep.
Sports medicine, what's that? We don't have that at Newcastle. We've got to revamp the entire training facility. Analytics is something that every other club has seemed to figure out besides Newcastle. So there's a lot of work to be done to put the systems in place in order for a team to be successful. And so I would say at a minimum, it's going to be 5 years. And that's me being generous. I think it's going to be closer to like 2027, 2028 when we see Newcastle actually lift a trophy, because it is hard to win a Premier League trophy. And, even if you have all the money in the world, it's still tough. It's tough for Liverpool. It's tough for Man U. It's tough for Man City. You have to get everything right. You have to get all your signings right. You have to get the manager right. You got to get the culture right. It's tough to win a trophy.
Yeah. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how they do this. The club is in such disarray right now, literally from the academy. I mean, the training ground. I mean, you see like rotting, like shingles on the roofs. The players are out, and this is probably hyperbole, but they're out in like blow up kiddie pools cooling off. It's like it's so
not
bad.
Hyperbole. There's a picture of that out there.
There it is. I see guys in like garbage cans and stuff, and you just throw water and ice in it, but it speaks volumes. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done. And even if they do start, I mean, at some point, you feel like the money will just win out. I mean, you just acquire enough good players, you're just going to win inevitably. But, I think, probably that 2026, maybe I was thinking like, there might be a few frustrating years in there, but I think this next window of like 5 years is going to be the most enjoyable, because it's that the pursuit of it. And, at some point when you have all the talent, you have all the resources, it's easy to become, I've never been disappointed with a draw, it feels like, before, but I hate the idea of like being that entitled fan. So I feel like this next 5 years is going to be a fun, fight towards that challenging for a title. So maybe 26, 27, 28, somewhere in there will be when they're going for it.
Yeah, I think for me, even like I would have said 26, 27, something like that, just because you look at like even when Chelsea were bought or City were bought, there were not many title contenders at that time, and there were not many, really good football clubs in the Premier League itself. Right now, it's a lot. Like you look at the clubs even below those top 4 or the big 6, if we can say that, there are a lot of clubs who are like, constantly challenging for that top 4 spots. It's not going to be as easy as it was like, for those clubs when you just bought them, and you in a couple of years you do some things and then just go after that couple of years, and you get that success.
Yeah,
it's going to be
Wolves, Everton. I mean, there's a lot of
West Ham.
Yeah, West Ham. There's a lot of teams with a lot of money that have spent it well, have a clear direction, have a manager that seems like they're going to stick around for the long term. I know Wolves is a different story, but I mean, like what's gone on at Leicester, what's going on at Everton, what's going on. I mean, it's really impressive, and it's nice. And like you said, eventually it's going to a point where it's like, if you have the money to, like Man City did a couple seasons ago, legitimately spend like £150 million on just defenders. at that point, it's like it's tough for you not to win.
Yeah, exactly.
You
exactly.
can afford
but,
that.
but again, it has to make sense, right? Like
Mhm.
you can't just, because you just have money, you can just throw it out on
Mhm.
players. It has to make sense. It has to make sense with the manager. It has to fit within that club's mentality and the club's, the overall vision of that club. Definitely has to fit in on all of that. Yeah, I think I don't have anything else to continue on this, but I thank you, Alex and Elijah, for coming onto our channel, the Late Winner Show, providing your thoughts. And I can definitely see that you guys are, from your opinions, that you guys are really excited about this. Definitely would want to follow this story for the next, definitely next couple of years, next couple of months. Definitely what's happening in and around the club. That would be definitely a wonderful stuff to to see what's happening in and around the club.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us, boss.
All right, yeah. Please make sure that before we log off, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the Late Winner Show. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Go follow Alex and Elijah. I'll leave the links in the description below to their channels and to their links on social media. Definitely, they're doing good content on Newcastle. So definitely go give them a follow as well. Well, that being said, I think Alex and Elijah, I think again, thank you so much, and I'll see you later. Good night.
Good night.
See you guys.